How do you maintain the balance between, say, a Firefly and a more traditional product that has been in the market like a Photoshop and Premiere?
Really about just putting the customer first and trying to figure out like how do we make them more productive. And so those could be small things, they could be big things, they could be new products, they can be existing products. And I think we just try to let that, guide our way.
How do you go about creating localization in your products?
Specifically in India, my largest design team is in India. I think that's really important, having people who live there, know the culture, like understand, and we're not having like this translation from someone who's like never been there before.
In this mobile first creator ecosystem, how does Adobe figure out what is our priority in terms of design?
We didn't say like, how do we put Premiere on the phone? We said, how do we make the best video editor in the market?
Guys, welcome to the latest episode of Tech Pulse, and today I have a very special guest. Well, if you are somebody who's been using Adobe since its inception and all the products that are out there, you will find this conversation very interesting. We're talking about the future, we're talking about the present, and some bit of the past. I am joined by Eric Snowden. Hi Eric, how are you doing?
Hey, good.
Congratulations on a very successful Adobe Max 2025.
Thank you. It's been a big couple days.
I'm sure. Well, we are going to pick your brain quickly with 5 to 6 simple questions.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, I firstly wanted to understand balance. That's a very important factor when it comes down to creativity, when it comes down to building these massive products. And now that we are in the AI age, we are seeing that Adobe is on the forefront and you're building products. Firefly is a flagship product for you guys right now. How do you maintain the balance between, say, a Firefly and a more traditional product that has been in the market like a Photoshop and Premiere?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I think everything we do is driven by customer needs, customer demands, and trying to solve real problems that customers have every day. And so whether that's in a tool like Illustrator, and we launched a ton of new features in Illustrator, which were driven by top customer asks. So, small things like improvements to snapping and renaming artboards, which can get really detailed, all the way up to completely new AI tools that we announced. It's really about just putting the customer first and trying to figure out like, how do we make them more productive? And so those could be small things, they could be big things, they could be new products, they could be existing products. And I think we just try to let that, guide our way. And wherever those fall within the portfolio that's the right answer, I think.
Absolutely. Now that you have mentioned that there are dedicated teams, there must be some challenges as well. Now you're running a full-blown ecosystem of products that, while they have the soul that is similar, the unification and the execution is very different. What are the sort of challenges that you see now that you're basically running an entire behemoth?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think we talk about skills transfer a lot, right? So if you learn a skill in one product, that should be something that benefits you when you go to your second Adobe product or your third Adobe product. But we don't want that to be academic. We don't want to over-rotate on that to a point of where we have consistency that is just for the sake of consistency, because that can end up actually having a lowest common denominator effect. And so we really try to look at workflows that cross between our apps and focus on where are people traversing the different apps, where are they most likely to see those issues or scenes, and how do we make those journeys as smooth as possible. I think we also look at features that we believe are going to have the largest impact. And if we see it in one place, we'll often end up bringing it into another tool. So there are examples like these new context bars that we've released in the last couple releases. We shipped it in one application, ended up getting used by an enormous percentage of our user base. And so we started bringing it across the portfolio. So the apps end up learning from each other as well.
Absolutely. Now, we know that while we have a big ecosystem, there is certain amount of authenticity that also goes into the different regions across the globe. And I come from India, which is a very big market for you. You have so many employees, there are thousands of employees in India. I wanted to understand, how do you go about creating localization in your products and bringing in more authenticity, which is region-wise, say for India? What are the sort of considerations that Adobe makes to bring those products closer to, say, an Indian context?
That's a great question. I mean, specifically in India, my largest design team is in India.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. So I'll be there soon to visit my team. And so if we take Adobe Express, for example, we have content teams that are creating all of our templates and assets that live inside of Express. And we have a dedicated team within my design team that lives in India that is creating assets for the market in India, and they live there, they know the space. And so we're not trying to create content for India from California, we're creating it from the country. And I think that's really important, having people who live there, know the culture, like understand, and we're not having like this translation from someone who's like never been there before, for an example. And so I think that like true context is really, really important.
And you guys do make sure that the kind of data or what your models are being trained on are being observed in real time from these.
Yeah, and we have teams that are really looking at our models and trying to make sure that we can represent the broadest swath of concepts, whether that's different kinds of people or locations or whatever it ends up being. Like we spend a lot of time checking for that, because everybody should be able to see themselves in the generations they're making in something like Firefly.
Fair. My next question is also sort of India related, but more of a global, in a global setup. Everyone is a content creator now.
Yep.
And clearly Adobe is also focused on that genre as well, because technically everyone fits into that genre. In this mobile first creator ecosystem, how does Adobe figure out what is our priority in terms of design, and this is what we want to take an action on, because everybody is creating on the go?
Yeah.
How do you figure that out?
I mean, I think one of the best examples we have is Premiere on the iPhone, which we launched just a few weeks ago. And I think it's one of the apps that we're the most proud of right now. And I think part of that is by just working very closely with customers, like I mentioned earlier, making sure we're like very customer focused. We're talking to creators, we're talking to people who maybe haven't used an NLE before and would be scared off by Premiere Pro, and making sure we're really focused, that we're making sure that it's easy for people to like get started on. But, you know, we didn't say like, how do we put Premiere on the phone? We said, how do we make the best video editor in the market? It's great that it's backed by amazing technology from Premiere and Firefly, but we didn't start with the tech. We started with like, what is an amazing experience that a creator can just download from the store, get started on, start making something, and then end to end, like what do they need to be successful? Going back to my mention about journeys, I was talking about journeys across apps, but even within the app, like you need to go from, something you shot on your phone all the way to publishing, and be able to do that in a single application. Now it's a version 1, so we're going to be adding more features over time, but if you can't complete that end-to-end journey within the application, you're going to fail. And so there's a lot of like testing and iteration, and I myself have been using it on my phone for many months before we released it. And I think that's the beauty of having this global design team, is I've got hundreds of designers on my team that we're all creative people. We've been photographers or video makers or designers or painters or any number of things. And we love using Adobe products, and we've used them for decades. And so we're also trying to build products that we love using, but we want to make sure we're balancing our own feedback with feedback from customers.
Now that you have mentioned feedback, I wanted to understand what sorts of non-traditional metrics that you go forward to, because I'm sure that there are surveys that you guys do. Of course, when we are using a Premiere or any Adobe product, there is a feedback that comes in that you have to rate. But these are, we can say, a traditional metric of figuring out what change is going to make.
Yeah.
What are some non-traditional metrics that you look at if you want to make a switch into a product, or if you want to improve it or improvise it? But
yes. There's so many different things that go into sort of the recipe. I think there's everything you talked about. There's surveys, there's analytics, there's all sort of the basic things. Also within design, we have a pretty sizable user research team where their entire job is to go out and talk to customers, and we'll do like several months long longitudinal studies with individual users to see how they progress over time. I think that's something really important with a tool that may be different than, a website, for example, is, it's not something you're using occasionally. It might be something you use for 8-10 hours a day, every day for a year, and something that didn't bother you on day 1 might bother you in hour 7 of day 70, right? And so that's something we really need to like take into account. I would also say Adobe has an amazing community team where we host events and bring people in, and we teach them the products. We also bring in experts where we just have real conversations. The day 0 of Max, we call it, before the keynote, we bring in creative people from all over the world, and we host sessions with them and have them give us feedback in real time, just person to person. And, we really try to listen to that. And that makes it back to the product teams. We've been talking about that feedback we've been getting in person at Max more than almost anything this entire week. And I'm meeting with customers, all day long when I'm not saying in our keynotes. And so I think that in person is, it really means a lot. And that's a lot of feedback comes from that as well.
And I mean, everyone is hearing it out loud now that I mean, it's been a very successful Max for you. So we are hosting our first AI awards as well next year.
Amazing.
And you mentioned that you have worked in multiple startups. How do you see these rewards and of course a verified, certified award from a reputed publication supporting people and helping people? What do you think it will mean for an AI product that is upcoming?
I mean, I think it's huge. I think about, that's sort of what Max is for us, right? We work all year long, sometimes for multiple years on these products, and you're so close to it, you're working so hard, you almost can't see it anymore. And then you're able to show it on the Max stage and see other people's reactions and get that, feeling of seeing it again for the first time and get those kudos and hear from customers positive reactions. And I think this is a very similar thing where I'm sure these companies are working so hard and they've got this thesis, but they don't know if it's going to work. They don't know what the reception is going to be. And to get that recognition from someone like you all, I think is going to mean a lot. It might be the thing that keeps them going, right? And I think that's really needed, right? Especially in the early stages when, there's a lot of doubt when you're starting a new company. I think those moments of just someone saying like, you're doing a good job, keep going, like that really matters. And so I think it's a really big deal that you guys are doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Eric. It has been a pleasure. Absolute pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, great talking to you. Thanks.